I learned the song we just sang when I was in 4-H, singing around a campfire at age about 8. Easy song to sing, lots of familiar verses. Loved singing it. Very easy to sing. Going to lay down my sword and shield. Going to walk with the Prince of Peace. Easy as cake. Easy as cake. They knew it was going to be hard, but they had no idea how hard it was going to be. The war had been raging for a year and a half by the time those people gathered in the Pennsylvania State House on July 4th, 1776, to sign that Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. And they knew that probably there would still be conflict, but they had no idea it would last for another 6.5 years. They had no idea of the destruction, death, disease that would come as a result of signing that document. They knew it wasn't going to be easy, but they had no idea it was going to be that hard. Nor did they know how hard it was going to be once the fighting stopped to create that more perfect union. That it would take almost a decade more before the nuts and bolts of the Constitution that would bind those colonies together could be formed. And even then, none of them could have predicted that it would take a bloody war 85 years later to finally grant freedom to 20% of the population that was African American. Nor how much it would take 60 years, over the next 60 years beyond that, for people of a certain gender, i.e. women, to have the vote. Or that it would take up until 1947 before Native American peoples in this country would be free to vote. When they gathered that July 4th and put their John Hancocks and all the other signatures on that declaration, they had no idea how hard creating this country as a free nation, as a nation of equality, as a nation of law, as a nation of hope could possibly be. They could have asked Jeremiah. 85 years later, after the signing of that Declaration of Independence, everyone thought it was going to be over quickly. That the war that might come would be quick, easy, piece of cake. Young men signed up for the Union Army on 90-day contracts because for sure this war that began in the spring of 1861 would be over and done with by September, October at the latest. 90 days. On July 2nd of 1861, in the first major battle of that conflict, Congressmen took their wives and their children down to 25 miles south of Washington, D.C. to watch that battle, when the Union troops had marched out of Washington down to a place called Manassas or Bull Run, there to confront the Confederates for the first time. The congressmen and their families had picnic baskets in their buggies. Some took along opera glasses to see the battle. But by the end of the day, 10,000 Union and Confederate soldiers lay dead on the battlefield. Husbands, sons, brothers, uncles, cousins. And the Union Army had been put to rout and retreated. And by the time that war finally ended, that easy 90-day war, 4 years later, over 750,000 soldiers on both sides had died. And that does not count the African Americans who also served, nor the women and children caught in the crossfire. 2% of the population perished in that war, that quick and easy war. And it would take a good long time after the fighting finally ended to establish that just and lasting peace of which President Lincoln spoke in his second inaugural address, a month before his assassination. And one might argue, my brothers and sisters, we are still trying to find and create that just and lasting peace within ourselves as a nation and with others. They said it was going to be quick and easy, and it wasn't. The generals who commanded 100,000 British soldiers to get out of the trench that had been built along a 15-mile stretch on the banks of or near the Somme River in northern France in June of 1916. The British generals who commanded those 100,000 soldiers to go against the German forces across the way thought it would be over quickly. Because for the last entire week of that month of June, the English had been bombarding the German trenches and the German fortifications. And so the generals thought, piece of cake. They'd have a few casualties, but they sent 100,000 young men, brothers, sons, fathers, cousins, out of the trenches and across the field. And by the end of the day, 20,000 British soldiers had been mowed down and lay dead on the field. It was the worst day of any kind of military fight in British history. And it was the world's first taste of industrialized warfare. And when that battle, that was just supposed to last for a day or two, ended almost 5 months later, 1 million German, French, and English soldiers had either been killed or wounded. And the war would drag on even longer. It was not quick. It was not easy. Hananiah stood before the people of Israel and said, 2 years max, and God will bring you back from exile. Not to worry, piece of cake. You don't really have to do anything. God's going to do it all. God's going to grant peace. God's going to grant abundance. God's going to make everything fine once again. 2 years max. But Jeremiah, with this yoke of wood around his neck, stands in front of Hananiah and in the midst of all the people in the temple and says, no, it's not that way. It won't be that easy. No, it's going to require commitment. It's going to require turning around and turning back to God's ways of justice and mercy. It is not a piece of cake, folks. And anybody who tells you that it is, he says directly to Hananiah, is a liar. This man, he says, is a prophet of lies. Whew. Leave it to the ancient Israelites to get down and dirty. But he told the truth. Jeremiah did. A truth not only for his time and for his place and for his people, but I believe a truth we need to hear here and now. That in order to establish a just and lasting peace, in order to be the nation that we are called to be, it will once again take sacrifice and commitment and wisdom and courage. It is not easy. Not in the least. But Jeremiah reminds us, his voice stretching across the centuries, the millennia, that when a prophet prophesies true peace, not glossed over peace, but true peace, that means equality for all people and justice for all people, that takes hard work, and that takes time. And it's not easy. We're going to hear a lot of words over the next few days about this nation, about our legacy, and about what we should be doing now and into the future. And in the midst of all those words, I invite you to go back to Jeremiah's word. Jeremiah's word about what constitutes real peace, the true nature of a just and lasting peace, in the words of Lincoln, the true nature of a more perfect union of all people, no matter color, race, tongue, creed, gender, identity, orientation, all those things that divide us as a nation. It takes work. The people who signed that declaration and then stuck around to flesh out the Constitution knew that. Abraham Lincoln, in the midst of the cacophony of other voices saying how easy that war would be, knew that. The families of those British soldiers and all who lost their lives in World War I, the Great War, the war to end all wars, knew that. Knew that. And so, my brothers and sisters, should we. As we celebrate freedom, as we celebrate independence, let us also take time to pray for that peace and to pray for the wisdom and the courage we need individually, as a church, as a nation, to work for that peace, to pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor for that peace. Thanks be to God.